Imagine being, like, 3 days deep into the wilderness. You are completely off the grid, miles away from another single human being.
Right, total isolation.
Exactly. It's pitch black outside. You're finally drifting off to sleep. And just as your eyes close, someone standing right outside your thin nylon tent whispers your first name.
Oh, that immediately triggers a massive physiological response. I mean, your heart rate spikes, your pupils dilate, and your brain just frantically searches for a rational explanation that, well, simply does not exist in that environment.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today's deep dive is fundamentally going to change how you look at the great outdoors. We're analyzing 3 chilling, true, first-hand accounts of deep woods encounters, and these are sourced from the YouTube channel Mr. Nightmare.
Yeah, and our mission today isn't just to tell spooky campfire stories.
No, definitely not. We want to treat these accounts as actual case studies. We are going to examine the anatomy of these encounters, look at the survival psychology at play, and really figure out why our deeply ingrained illusion of safety is so easily shattered.
Because we tend to have this highly romanticized idea of, getting off the grid, we view the deep wilderness as this static, perfectly serene landscape painting that exists just for us to step into and admire.
We crave that isolation.
We really do. But we rarely stop to consider the harsh, unpredictable reality of who or what might be out there actively sharing that exact same isolation with us.
Yeah, it's like you look closer at the brushstrokes of that beautiful painting, and you realize you are surrounded by a living, breathing ecosystem that is fundamentally indifferent to your survival.
Completely indifferent.
And sometimes the most dangerous anomalies in that ecosystem don't look like monsters at all. Which brings us to our first point, the concept of a predator hiding in plain sight.
This is a fascinating dynamic.
Right. So take a very small, highly isolated rural town, the kind of place with maybe like one supermarket, where the closest Walmart is an hour away, and it is entirely swallowed by miles upon miles of untouched forest.
In a community like that, trust is the default setting. The societal safety nets we rely on in a city, quick police response times, streetlights, anonymity, those are replaced by a reliance on your neighbors.
And that default trust creates a really dangerous dynamic when someone totally erratic enters the picture. So the narrator of our first case study moves to this exact kind of town to escape the city and, hike those vast woodlands.
Right.
And almost immediately, they encounter a local fixture named Hector.
Hector is quite the character.
Yeah, absolutely. Hector is about 5'3", built like an absolute ox, bald on top with a ponytail, and sports this long, dirty gray beard.
Visually striking, to say the least.
Yeah, and he wears a stained white tank top and royal blue pants. But his defining characteristic, the thing that makes him a local spectacle, is that he skips everywhere he goes.
Which is, a grown, heavily built man skipping down a rural road is an immediate behavioral anomaly. It's absurd. And yet, the community response is what's truly interesting here.
The first time the narrator meets him, Hector literally runs up to their car window at 5 in the morning, screams directly in their face, and then just skips away down the street.
Wow.
Yeah. The narrator is stunned. But a coworker immediately brushes it off, saying, "Oh, that's just Hector. He's harmless. He's just a homeless guy who wanders around."
The whole town has just accepted this.
Basically. The entire town has agreed he lives under a bridge somewhere, and they just leave him alone.
So this is a textbook example of normalcy bias working on a community-wide level.
Normalcy bias.
Yeah, it's a psychological phenomenon where people underestimate both the possibility of a disaster and its possible effects. In an isolated town, acknowledging that a highly erratic, physically capable man might be dangerous, it's deeply uncomfortable.
Because it ruins the illusion.
Exactly. It forces the town to acknowledge that their quiet paradise is fundamentally unsafe. So human brains literally rewrite the red flags to preserve their baseline of safety. They neutralize the threat by labeling him a harmless eccentric.
They turn him into a quirky mascot to avoid dealing with the reality of him.
Precisely.
But that willful ignorance gets violently stripped away. Skip forward a bit, and the narrator is hiking deep in the pure wilderness.
Yeah.
They're hours off any marked trail, and suddenly they hear a voice echoing through the trees.
Now, hearing any human voice out there is already a massive red flag.
Totally. So they sneak closer, peek around a tree, and they see Hector. He's alone, but he is having a fractured conversation out loud, rapidly alternating between 2 distinct personas.
The clinical curiosity of this moment is just staggering because we are seeing the mask slip. The source describes a complete psychological break playing out in real time.
It's terrifying. One voice is furious. It's belittling him, calling him a coward, just full of venom. And then instantly, the voice switches to this weeping, pathetic tone, just begging for forgiveness.
Wow.
The narrator is watching this from behind a tree, totally frozen. Then the angry voice returns, but the context changes. Hector stops talking to himself. He says out loud, he's hiding behind the tree, "This time you can't let him get away."
Oh, that is the exact moment the illusion shatters. The weeping victim persona completely vanishes, and it's replaced by a hyper-aware, aggressive predator.
He looks right at the tree with genuine, terrifying rage in his eyes. He drops the skipping act entirely. No more quirky local character.
The lure is gone.
Exactly. He sprints incredibly fast and chases the narrator for miles through the woods, screaming and laughing, promising they won't get out alive.
That is pure nightmare fuel.
The narrator barely makes it back to town. And when they finally tell the retired local sheriff what happened, she turns absolutely pale. Because years prior, in that exact same spot in the woods, the remains of a local man were found.
Oh, man.
A discovery that happened right around the time Hector first appeared in town. And after this chase, Hector completely vanishes into the woods.
You know, the psychological shift in that forest clearing is what makes this so disturbing. When Hector switches from weeping to suddenly calling out the narrator's exact location, it destroys the blissful ignorance the town projected onto him.
Yeah, it really does.
It reveals a highly calculated individual who is perfectly aware of his surroundings.
But seriously, I think anyone listening to this is probably yelling at their steering wheel right now. How does a town that small not investigate a mysterious, erratic guy showing up right when a violent murder happens?
It's a massive institutional failure, driven by a lack of rural resources and that deeply ingrained denial we discussed. Investigating him would mean looking the monster right in the eye.
It reminds me of an anglerfish. You know those terrifying deep-sea fish with the little glowing lure on their heads?
Oh, yeah, the perfect analogy.
Hector skipping, the weird clothes, the harmless wandering. It's the glowing lure. It's a quirky, non-threatening distraction meant to hold your attention just long enough for the deadly predator behind it to strike.
But that disguise of harmlessness only works when you can actually see the threat.
Right.
That psychological manipulation gets infinitely darker when the threat removes itself from your line of sight entirely and uses the isolated environment to actively mess with your head.
Which forces us to look at how survival instincts fail when the terror becomes completely unseen, when you are no longer dealing with a physical pursuit, but coordinated psychological warfare.
Yeah, the unseen threat is always worse for the human psyche.
Let's examine our second case study. We follow a couple, Artie and Katie, on a 4-day hike in the mountains of upstate New York.
Beautiful area, but very rugged.
Yes, the narrator specifically notes this is vastly underrated wilderness. It's massive, dense, and incredibly isolating. So on night one, they're zipped into their tent. Katie wakes up terrified.
What does she hear?
She hears heavy, deliberate bipedal footsteps pacing right outside their thin nylon walls. Not an animal foraging, a person pacing. And every few minutes, this unseen person lets out a high-pitched, mocking giggle.
Consider the mechanics of a tent in the wilderness for a second. It is a fascinating psychological boundary.
How so?
Well, it provides absolutely zero physical protection against a threat. You can slice through it with a pocket knife, but our brains rely on it to hide us. We treat it like a fortress.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Right, so when someone paces just inches outside of it, they're deliberately violating your psychological boundary while teasing the physical one. They are demonstrating complete control over your safety.
It's pure intimidation.
Yeah.
And it escalates the next morning. The pacing stops, but when they emerge, they find strange, unnaturally stacked rocks placed in deliberate formations all around their campsite.
Rocks that were definitely not there the night before.
Exactly. Now, Artie, pushing the absolute limits of logic here, convinces Katie to hike for another half day instead of turning back immediately.
Oh, that is a huge mistake.
Huge. So night 2 falls, Katie crashes from exhaustion, but Artie is awake. And right as he's drifting off, he is jolted awake by a soft female whisper right outside the tent. The whisper says, "Come outside, Artie."
Wow. Using the victim's name is the critical escalation in this encounter. If we analyze the tactics of psychological warfare, this is a devastating blow.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I keep getting stuck on that detail. How on earth did they know his name was Artie? Was this just an insanely elaborate prank by dedicated stalkers who followed them from the city, or something actually sinister?
The origin of how they got the name almost matters less than the deployment of it. Think about it.
Yeah.
In the deep woods, Your primary defense mechanism is anonymity. You are a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, nobody knows you're there.
Exactly. So when an unseen threat uses your specific name in the dark, it strips away that anonymity instantly. It forces the realization that you are not a random variable. You are targeted.
That is chilling.
They've been watching long enough and listening closely enough to extract your identity. It makes the vast open woods feel incredibly claustrophobic.
And chaos immediately follows that whisper. A second woman's voice chimes in saying, yeah, Artie, please come outside. We're waiting.
So now there are multiple threats.
Right. Then multiple people start running rapid circles around the tent. High-pitched, uncontrollable cackling fills the air. The stalkers start physically pushing in the sides of the tent.
The violation of that physical boundary.
Yes. And amidst the laughing, a loud, deep male voice suddenly booms out. Come outside now.
It's a coordinated sensory overload. The goal isn't immediate physical violence. The goal is to induce absolute paralyzing panic. They are breaking down the victim's cognitive defenses.
Artie and Katie are frozen in terror until the footsteps finally scatter and run off. After 30 minutes of dead silence, Artie slowly unzips the tent flap.
And what does he see?
Standing 20 feet away in the pitch black is a young woman in her 20s. She is smiling. She just waves at him. And she is wearing a pristine, clean white dress.
A white dress out there.
Yes. The next morning, she's gone. But the campsite is covered in scattered rocks and sticks tied into bizarre, unrecognizable symbols. They basically sprint the entire day's hike back to their car.
I don't blame them.
But I have to bring up the dress. Seeing a clean white dress in the middle of the dirty, muddy, deep woods, it's like a glitch in a video game. It literally short-circuits your brain.
That short circuit is the precise psychological function of the dress. Yeah. Our brains are constantly running automated threat assessment algorithms based on environmental context. When you are in the deep woods, your brain is scanning for natural camouflage, animalistic movements, or, typical survival gear.
Right, hiking boots, flannel, that kind of thing.
Exactly. A pristine white dress in a muddy forest is an extreme environmental anomaly. It doesn't belong. It forces your brain to stall out, trying to process the absurdity of the visual data.
Wow, so it's a deliberate tactic.
It is designed to disorient you, making you question your own reality and your own sanity before you can even begin to recognize the physical danger. It's highly theatrical, which implies a level of organization far more terrifying than a random wild animal.
It is so deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
But, Artie and Katie were stalked against their will. They were victims of an environment that turned hostile.
True.
But what happens when we actively seek it out? When people push past the boundaries of the marked trail, cross the threshold, and just invite the danger in through unchecked curiosity?
Well, that transitions us from victims of circumstance to victims of exploration. The psychology shifts from evasion to direct confrontation.
Right. And in our final case study, we see exactly that. We have a group of 3 lifelong friends, the narrator, Theo, and Carlos.
Okay.
They have a long-standing tradition of trekking deep into unmapped woods to find and explore hidden caves. They are experienced outdoorsmen. They don't get spooked easily.
They know what they're doing.
They think they do. Way off any grid, they stumble upon a one-room wooden cabin. It's completely abandoned, no plumbing, no electricity, and crucially, 0 roads leading anywhere near it.
Which presents an architectural impossibility.
How do you mean?
The materials to build a cabin had to be transported there, but the lack of infrastructure means whoever built it went to extreme, grueling lengths to ensure absolute isolation.
That makes sense. Inside, the air is dry, heavy, and almost hard to breathe. And as they are standing in this silent, dusty room, they hear a noise coming from underneath the floorboards.
Oh, no.
It's a slow, rhythmic, dragging sound in the dirt. They start kicking away the debris on the floor, and they uncover it. A rusted metal handle set into the wood. A hidden trapdoor.
In every myth and narrative structure, the trapdoor is the ultimate threshold. It is the boundary between the known world and the underworld.
It is the ultimate do not press button.
Definitely.
But, driven by that unchecked curiosity, they open it. Immediately, they are hit with an overwhelming, horrific odor of rotting meat.
That's a huge warning sign.
The narrator wraps bandana around his face, clicks on his flashlight, and actually climbs down the ladder into the dark.
I can't believe he went down there.
I know. He finds himself in an unnaturally cold stone room held up by 2 giant structural beams. And pacing in the dark is a man. He's clean-shaven, has messy dark hair, and is wearing a green t-shirt and jeans.
Okay, very normal looking.
Yeah, but he is limping, heavily dragging his right foot, which was the sound they heard from above. He's breathing heavily and mumbling continuously in a language the narrator can't identify.
Notice how the narrator initially processes this scene. The brain tries to categorize this man as a fellow human in distress.
Right. The narrator actually shouts out, asking if he's okay. But the man is entirely unresponsive. He just keeps limping and mumbling. So the narrator steps a little closer.
Oh, bad idea.
And that's when everything changes. The man stops. He stops limping. He stops mumbling. He stops his heavy breathing. He turns just his head to look at the narrator. Then he slowly turns his body. And he goes completely, totally still.
The biological data processing in that split second is just profound.
When the narrator finally panics and grabs the ladder to flee, the man takes one single, deliberate step toward him.
He's stalking him.
The friends scramble up the ladder, and when they look back down through the trapdoor, the man is standing at the bottom. He is staring straight up at them with these horrible, lifeless eyes, just resting one hand lightly in the ladder rungs.
That image is horrifying.
They eventually get out, and the police investigate the coordinates, but they find absolutely nothing. No man, no trapdoor, no evidence of life, and no missing person reports that match the description.
Completely vanished.
Now, I had to play devil's advocate here on behalf of the listener. I know the sensory details were terrifying. But wasn't it a bit irresponsible to just run away? What if this guy wasn't a monster, but a victim being held captive down there?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that moral dilemma is entirely valid if we apply the ethics of civilization to this scenario.
Right.
In a normal setting, the ethical move is absolutely to render aid, but we have to look at the hardwired biological imperatives that overrode the narrator's civilized ethics.
Okay, break that down for me.
First, analyze the olfactory trigger, the smell of rotting meat. In evolutionary biology, that is not just an unpleasant odor. That specific scent bypasses cognitive thought and triggers an immediate alarm in the human nervous system to flee.
Because it means danger.
Exactly. It signals disease, severe decay, and historically the presence of a predator's kill cache. Their bodies were chemically screaming at them to run before they even laid eyes on the man.
So the lizard brain is already taking the wheel before the visual data even registers.
Exactly. And then you layer on the visual behavioral data, which induces a profound uncanny valley effect.
The uncanny valley.
Yeah, it occurs when something looks almost exactly human, but behaves in a way that is just slightly disturbingly off. When a human being is in genuine need of rescue, their body language reflects it, they reach out, they show relief, they vocalize a plea for help. This man did the exact opposite.
They went entirely still.
Which is the key indicator. The sudden cessation of all movement, the suppressed breathing, the single calculated step forward. Those are not the markers of a traumatized victim seeking aid.
What are they, though?
In the animal kingdom, when an anomaly goes perfectly still while locking eyes with you, it is calculating the distance for a strike. Those lifeless eyes were the final neurological cue that this was an unpredictable, potentially lethal entity.
Wow. So they made the right call.
Running wasn't a failure of morality. It was a highly functioning, ancient survival instinct successfully executing its primary protocol, keep the organism alive.
It just strips away all the modern logic we think we'd use. So what does this all mean for us? We started by looking at the wilderness as this beautiful, static landscape painting. But we've peeled back the layers to expose the incredibly dark realities hidden behind the brushstrokes.
We really have.
We've seen the mechanics of the predator, who uses a quirky disguise and a community's own normalcy bias to hide his violent nature in plain sight.
And we've examined the psychological tormentors who weaponize your own identity and use bizarre visual glitches like a white dress in the mud to break down your reality.
Exactly. And finally, we've looked at the terrifying, unexplainable anomalies buried beneath places that simply shouldn't exist, where our oldest survival instincts are the only things keeping us alive.
It serves as a stark, necessary reminder. The natural world is magnificent, yes, but it demands a profound level of respect and situational awareness, because the very isolation that makes the wilderness so beautiful also makes it the ultimate sanctuary for things that actively do not want to be found.
It really makes you realize how incredibly fragile our little bubble of safety actually is once we leave the pavement.
It does. And I want to leave you with one final chilling question to ponder long after we wrap up today.
Alrighty.
Think about the sheer statistical improbability of the three events we just analyzed. A killer hiding his nature as a skipping man. A coordinated group executing psychological warfare in the pitch black. a subterranean room holding a lifeless-eyed man mimicking human behavior.
And they were all found purely by chance.
Exactly. These incredibly disturbing anomalies were stumbled upon completely by accident by average hikers just passing through a tiny fraction of the woods.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
So, if these are the terrors we managed to find by accident, what is currently hiding out there? Deep within the millions of acres of unmapped, unmonitored wilderness that hasn't been found yet.
Well, next time you look at that sprawling landscape painting, you might want to look a little closer at the shadows. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you next time.